For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
There are some interesting non-issues with respect to the Nepal elections that are being held on November 20th. And I have with me to discuss them Amish Mulmi, a well-known writer and author. He's appeared on StratNewsGlobal before. Amish, glad to have you.
Thank you, Surya.
Amish, non-issues in this election, is that the reason why electioneering is so dull?
No, I think there has been a significant, let's say, lack of interest in the election for several reasons. The first is we have the same old faces that are standing for elections again. So in a sense, there is a voter fatigue in sort of having to elect the same old people. In terms of issues, unlike the last election where you had a dose of nationalism coming in, where you had promises of development, this time most parties and their manifestos, they do not promise anything new. And the parties themselves also have not raised any major issues per se that could, let's say, bring or excite the voters this time around, right? So I think between these two aspects of these upcoming elections, what we have is an election campaign that has remained dull for the most part. However, the Election Commission has also now permitted campaigns to go ahead for the rallies, etc. So we may see more rallies, more, let's say, public addresses in the days to come, till the 17th, I believe.
Now, when it comes to the moral center of this election, we were talking about it a little earlier. What did you explain by that? What do you mean by that?
I think what's happened is that the Nepali voter has seen how a government that had majority also had to resign. We've seen how successive parties who've been in power have been embroiled in corruption controversies, and none of the parties have raised that as an issue this time around. The voters have also seen a significant lack of disconnect between the political parties and the voting population. So you don't have a lot of, let's say, appeal to the younger people. You don't have a lot of younger candidates. You don't have a lot of, you have fewer than 10% women candidates this time. You have fewer indigenous group candidates, fewer Dalit candidates. So with all of this, I think what has happened is that these elections lack a moral center around which any particular leader or a political party can claim a moral high ground in asking for votes. So because of that, almost all the parties are looking alike. Almost all the leaders, the Nepali population has experienced all the leaders as well. And there has been an increase in popularity of a trend known as No Not Again, which pretty much implies or which is asking voters to not vote for the same old faces again. However, the issue is that one may not choose to vote for the existing leaders, but there are no new alternatives also to start with. In a few places, we have had new parties putting up their candidates, new independent candidates who've come into the fray. So there is a possibility there of some shock defeats or some new victories, right, which will really energize the population. But speaking largely, I think the Nepali voter is pretty much fatigued.
I find there is no outreach to women, to young people. Any particular reason why this is happening?
I think there are two reasons. The first is obviously the traditional patriarchy in Nepali society sort of has embedded itself within political parties and institutions to such a degree that most political parties are led, almost all, in fact, political parties are led by old men of a particular caste, right, and ethnic group. That is the first. The second is the calls for inclusion, the calls for secularism that had really innovated this transition to the republic, the calls for federalism. All of these issues have been literally been cast aside. No political party is laying stake to these issues. No political party is sort of campaigning around these issues. So that sort of tells us that the centralization, the centralizing tendency of the Nepali state that existed before the republic, the existing political leaders would like that to continue. And as for the third, as to why there is no outreach towards women, towards the younger population, as I said, I mean, if you have fewer than 10% women candidates to start with, right? And this is despite a law that says that 33% of the parliament has to be women. This tells us that Nepali political parties, at least the existing traditional political parties, really don't have any interest or uh, let's say they do not want to invest in training, in sort of encouraging a new generation of leaders, a new, let's say, new women leaders, new younger leaders. It's a bit of an ironical situation, especially considering a majority of Nepal's population is in the 25 to 40 demographic. So
Interesting. Okay, I come to my last question. This is about what happens after the elections. We were talking earlier, you mentioned that the geopolitical challenges before Nepal are going to be particularly acute. Would you elaborate?
So any leader, or rather any government that is formed after the elections, will have the biggest challenge that they will face in terms of foreign policy will be balancing the interests and the demands that not just China and India make, but also now the US after the MCC has been incorporated in Nepal as well. So I think that will be the biggest challenge, especially at a time when the US-China contest is sharpening, at a time when India and China are not on very good terms. So that will be a big challenge for any leader who will come in after the elections.
Interesting. So, would you care to predict? Last question, final question. Would you care to make any predictions about the end result?
Uh, we'll see same old faces. We will see less emphasis on federalism and more emphasis on centralizing tendencies. We will definitely see some of the same old men who will be in government once again. But I would also not be surprised if there are a few upsets. A few of the leaders may be defeated from their strongholds by newer candidates simply because of the voter fatigue that I mentioned earlier.
Amish, thank you. Pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Surya.